Let me now bring in Michael Shoebridge from the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Michael, there's a lot to unpack there. I wonder if we can start with the Chinese ship. Just how unusual is this? How worried should we be about those activities? What are they up to?
Well, Chris, I think the problem is it's becoming less and less unusual. We used to expect this kind of Chinese intelligence gathering ship when there was a major US-Australian exercise underway, and we saw that in the last one. But to have them turn up now almost as a matter of routine really tells us our security environment in our near region has changed. This is a really out and proud Chinese military. They're willing to intimidate and coerce. And the other development we've got to join the dots to here is Solomon's security deal with Beijing, which makes the PLA Navy operating closer to Australia more routinely, like this, a part of the new normal. So that's why it's worth talking about.
Now, Peter Dutton briefed the country on this. He made it public. He used some pretty strident language. Beijing says that was fear-mongering, that Peter Dutton's reaction was over the top. But someone else runs a similar line, and that is the Premier of West Australia. Here's Mark McGowan.
All this rhetoric by Mr Dutton is just politics, and he is his language around war and around we've got to be prepared to fight. All this sort of stuff that's gone on for the last year is highly dangerous, and it's against the national interest. And it's actually it's inflammatory and unnecessary. And I just think he's he's the biggest threat to the national security.
Michael Shoebridge, is Mark McGowan right?
No, he sounds a lot like those people in Europe that were telling everybody that America and Ukraine were making it up when they were talking up the prospects of a Putin attack on Ukraine. How stupid do they look now? War is an active tool of autocrats like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, and we have to understand that. So I think some honesty with the Australian public is what we need. Noticing aggression by these belligerent autocracies is not making the aggression. It's being sensible about the dangerous world that we're in.
All right, when we talk about those AUKUS briefings and the fact Labor felt they were left out in the cold too long, even understanding how deeply sensitive and top secret those negotiations would have been. But how can that be when at the same time Labor's deputy leader, we now know, was secretly meeting with China, and even the hardheads within Labor are very, very concerned about how compromised he must be now?
Well, Chris, on AUKUS, either we've got bipartisan support or we don't. And I thought it was good news when Albanese came out at the time to give it his full support. You know, he put those conditions around it that this was about nuclear-powered submarines, not submarines carrying nuclear weapons. Well, that was never the plan anyway. But for anything to drive a wedge into the bipartisan support of AUKUS is a mistake. And I think it's being used for political domestic purposes, which aren't good news for Australian security. And frankly, on these meetings that people have with Beijing's representatives, we've got to understand Beijing is only changing in a way that is adverse for our and the world's security. And pretending otherwise is going to lead to disappointment. So anyone that thinks differently is doomed to disappointment.
Just very briefly, there are media reports around today focusing on the health of Xi Jinping, suggesting that he's in serious health strife. Is there enough reporting around that for us to be taking this seriously at the moment?
Not really. We're hearing similar rumours about Putin. But I think we've got to remember when people are doing all of these calculations about international relations and strategy and politics, human lifespans are really important. So Xi and Putin are both ageing leaders, and there are things they want to do while they're alive. I think that's a big explanation for Putin starting his horrific war in Ukraine. And I think for those of us worried about the security in our region, Xi's age should factor more into our discussion than it does.